Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Sophia, and with me is James. Today, we're going to talk about something really important: how to overcome the fear of speaking English. Many people feel nervous when speaking in a new language, but don't worry, you're not alone. James, have you ever felt nervous speaking a language you were learning?
Oh yes, definitely. When I first started learning Spanish, I was really afraid to speak. I was scared of making mistakes or sounding silly. It's very normal to feel this way, but the good news is you can get over it. The more you practice, the more comfortable you will feel.
Exactly. That's such an important point. One of the main reasons people feel afraid to speak English is the fear of making mistakes. But guess what? Making mistakes is part of learning. Every time you make a mistake, you learn something new. So don't be afraid of it, embrace it.
Yes, and another reason people feel afraid is because they think others will judge them. This can happen, but most people actually admire you for trying. Speaking a new language is not easy, and people know that. If someone laughs or corrects you, it's often because they want to help, not to hurt your feelings. So try not to let it get to you.
That's true. Most people are supportive, especially if they know you're learning. And speaking of support, it's a good idea to find people who encourage you. Try practicing with friends or family who are patient. You can also find a language partner who is learning your native language. This way, you can help each other.
Yes, and speaking with someone who is also learning can be less stressful. You won't feel as nervous because they are in the same situation as you. And guess what? You don't need to be perfect. It's okay to not know every word. What's important is communicating your message, not being perfect.
Right, the goal is communication, not perfection. Another way to reduce fear is to start small. For example, if you're too nervous to speak in full sentences, just say a word or two. Maybe start with greeting someone in English, like saying hello or how are you. Small steps can lead to bigger confidence.
Exactly, and you can practice these small things every day. Maybe when you're at a store, you can try saying thank you in English. The more you do this, the easier it becomes, and slowly, you'll start to feel more comfortable. It's like exercising a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
That's a great comparison. Speaking English is like a muscle you need to train. Another helpful tip is to practice speaking out loud when you're alone. You can read a book, repeat phrases from a TV show, or even talk to yourself in the mirror. This helps you get used to hearing your own voice in English, which can make it less scary when you speak to others.
Yes, that's a fantastic idea. Practicing by yourself is great because there's no pressure. You can make mistakes, try different things, and it's all just for you. The more you practice out loud, the easier it will be when you speak to other people.
And let's not forget about listening. Listening to English can help you feel more confident when speaking. When you listen to podcasts, watch videos, or even songs in English, you're training your brain. The more you listen, the more familiar the language becomes, and that helps a lot with speaking.
That's so true. Listening is key. It helps you learn new words, understand different accents, and feel more comfortable with how the language sounds. And don't be afraid to repeat what you hear. You can pause a video or podcast and try saying the same sentence. It's great practice.
Yes, repeating phrases is a powerful tool. Plus, it helps improve your pronunciation. And speaking of pronunciation, remember that it's okay if your accent is different. Everyone has an accent, and it's part of who you are. The most important thing is to be understood, not to sound perfect.
Exactly. Don't let the fear of having an accent stop you from speaking. The more you speak, the more natural your pronunciation will become. Just keep practicing, and little by little, you'll notice improvement.
That's right. So, to recap what we've talked about so far, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Find supportive people to practice with. Start small, practice by yourself. Listen and repeat. And don't worry about your accent. Each of these steps will help you feel more confident when speaking English.
Yes, and the more you practice, the less nervous you will feel. Over time, speaking English will feel more natural. It's a journey, and every small step brings you closer to your goal.
Now that we've talked about some basic tips to help overcome the fear of speaking English, let's dig a little deeper into why this fear happens. Many people feel self-conscious about speaking in front of others. They think, what if I say the wrong thing? Or what if people don't understand me? This kind of thinking can make you feel stuck, right, James?
Yes, exactly. It's like a voice inside your head telling you not to speak because something might go wrong. But the truth is, everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers. Nobody speaks perfectly all the time, and that's okay. What matters is the effort you put in. I remember when I was learning French, I made tons of mistakes, but I learned from them.
That's so true. Everyone makes mistakes, and they are actually a great learning tool. Instead of worrying about making a mistake, you can think of it as a chance to improve. It's all about how you look at the situation. If you see mistakes as a bad thing, you'll feel afraid. But if you see them as a step toward learning, they won't seem so scary anymore.
Absolutely. It's all about changing your mindset. When you're learning a language, it's easy to focus on what you don't know. You might think, I don't know enough words, or I can't make a full sentence. But instead of thinking about what you can't do, focus on what you can do. Maybe you can say good morning or thank you, or ask for directions. That's progress.
Yes, it's important to celebrate the small wins. Every word you learn, every sentence you say, even if it's not perfect, is a victory. It means you're getting better. Sometimes we get so focused on big goals, like becoming fluent, that we forget to notice the little successes along the way. And those little successes are what build confidence over time.
Exactly. Confidence doesn't happen overnight. It's something you build piece by piece. And one way to build confidence is to put yourself in situations where you have to speak English. It can be scary, but it's also the best way to improve. Maybe you're ordering food at a restaurant or asking someone for help. These real-life situations give you the practice you need. The more you do it, the easier it becomes.
That's such a good point. Real-life situations can be the best teachers. And you don't have to start with something big. You can start with small interactions, like saying hello to someone on the street or asking a simple question. Then, as you feel more comfortable, you can try longer conversations. The key is to keep putting yourself out there, even if it feels uncomfortable at first.
Yes, and it's important to remember that feeling uncomfortable is normal. Everyone feels nervous when they're doing something new, especially something as challenging as speaking a new language. But each time you push through that feeling, you get a little stronger. It's like you're training your brain to be more confident.
That's a great way to look at it. And another thing that can really help is setting realistic goals. Sometimes people feel afraid because they set their goals too high. They think, I need to speak like a native speaker, or I need to be fluent right away. But language learning takes time, and it's okay to set small, achievable goals. For example, instead of trying to have a long conversation right away, you could aim to ask 3 questions in English today. What do you think about goal setting, James?
I think it's super important. Setting small, realistic goals keeps you motivated. If your goal is too big, like I want to be fluent, it can feel overwhelming. But if you break it down into smaller steps, like I want to learn 10 new words this week, or I want to practice speaking for 10 minutes every day, it feels more manageable. And when you achieve those small goals, you feel proud of yourself, which builds confidence.
Exactly, and when you achieve one small goal, it gives you the motivation to keep going. Each small step gets you closer to the bigger goal of becoming a confident English speaker. And speaking of goals, another thing to keep in mind is that it's okay to make mistakes along the way. It's actually part of the process. No one ever became fluent in a language without making mistakes.
That's right. Mistakes are like stepping stones on your journey to fluency. Each mistake teaches you something new. Maybe you used the wrong word or your grammar wasn't perfect, but now you know how to fix it. It's all part of learning, so instead of feeling bad when you make a mistake, try to see it as a good thing. It means you're learning and growing.
I love that. And you know what? Another thing that can really help is finding a language learning community. When you're surrounded by people who are also learning, it makes the process less scary. You can share your struggles, help each other, and practice together. Whether it's an online group or a local language exchange, being part of a community can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. A community gives you support and motivation. When you see other people facing the same challenges, it makes you feel less alone. And practicing with others, even if they're not native speakers, is still great practice. You're all in the same boat, so there's no need to feel embarrassed. Everyone is learning together.
And sometimes, learning with others can be more fun than learning alone. You can play language games, do role plays, or just have simple conversations about your day. It takes away some of the pressure and makes speaking English more enjoyable. Plus, when you see others improving, it can inspire you to keep going.
That's so true. Learning together can make the process feel less serious and more like an adventure. You're all on the same journey, and each person's progress helps motivate the group. And even when you're not with a group, you can still practice speaking in everyday situations. Don't wait for the perfect moment to speak English, just do it whenever you can.
Yes, everyday opportunities are everywhere. You don't need to be in a classroom to practice English. You can practice at the supermarket, at a coffee shop, or even when you're watching TV. Try to describe what you're doing in English or talk about what you see. The more you use English in your daily life, the more natural it will feel.
Exactly. And one final tip for today is to be patient with yourself. Learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. You won't wake up one day and suddenly be fluent. It takes time, and it's important to be kind to yourself along the way. Celebrate your progress. No matter how small it seems, every step forward is a success.
Absolutely. Be patient, keep practicing, and don't give up. It's normal to have ups and downs, but as long as you keep moving forward, you're on the right path. Everyone's journey is different, and that's okay. What matters is that you're trying, and that's something to be proud of. So now that we've talked about changing your mindset, setting goals, and practicing in real-life situations, let's explore how to deal with specific fears that can come up when speaking English. One of the most common fears is speaking in front of a group or in public. Even people who are comfortable speaking one-on-one can feel nervous when they have to speak to more than one person. What do you think about that, James?
Oh, that's a big one. Speaking in front of a group can be really intimidating. I've seen many learners who are fine when they speak to just one person but freeze up when there's an audience. It's like all the pressure builds up and you start to worrying more about how you're being judged. But in reality, most people in the audience are just listening. They're not judging every word you say.
Exactly, and that's something we forget. When you're speaking to a group, it feels like all eyes are on you. But most people are just focused on what you're saying, not how you're saying it. They're not paying attention to every little mistake. In fact, they might not even notice if you make a mistake because they're more interested in your message.
Right. It's easy to think that if you make a mistake, everyone will notice and judge you, but that's not usually the case. People are often more understanding than we think, especially when they know you're speaking in a language that's not your first. They respect the effort you're putting in. Plus, most people won't even remember small mistakes you might, but they won't.
That's such a good point. The fear of making a mistake can be much bigger in our heads than in reality. One technique that can help with speaking in front of groups is preparation. When you know what you're going to say, it can give you more confidence. For example, if you're going to give a presentation or speak in class, practicing beforehand can make a big difference.
Yes, preparation is key. The more you practice before speaking, the more comfortable you'll feel. You don't have to memorize everything, but having a general idea of what you want to say helps. You can practice in front of a mirror, record yourself speaking, or practice with a friend. The more familiar you are with the material, the less anxious you'll feel when it's time to speak.
Exactly, and practicing aloud is especially important. When you speak in your head, it feels different than when you actually say the words out loud. Your mouth needs to get used to forming the words, and your brain needs to get used to hearing your voice in English. The more you practice aloud, the smoother it will be when you speak in front of others.
That's a great tip. Another thing that can help is focusing on your breathing. When we get nervous, we tend to breathe shallowly or even hold our breath, which can make us feel more anxious. Taking slow, deep breaths can help calm your nerves before you speak. It gives you a moment to relax and focus, and it can make your voice sound more steady.
Yes, breathing is so important. It's something we often forget about when we're nervous. Deep breathing helps you stay calm and gives your brain more oxygen, which can help you think more clearly. Before you speak in front of a group, try taking a few deep breaths to center yourself. It can make a big difference in how you feel.
Absolutely. And another thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to speak quickly. When we're nervous, we tend to rush through our words because we just want to get it over with. But speaking slowly not only helps you feel more in control, it also makes it easier for people to understand you. You can take your time, there's no need to rush.
That's so true. Slowing down is one of the best ways to manage nerves when speaking. It gives you more time to think, and it makes your speech clearer. Plus, it helps you sound more confident. When someone speaks too fast, it can sound like they're unsure of what they're saying. But when you speak slowly and clearly, it shows that you're confident and in control.
Yes, and something that has helped me personally when speaking in front of groups is making eye contact. It might sound scary at first, but making eye contact with people in your audience helps you connect with them. It makes the conversation feel more natural. Instead of feeling like you're speaking to a group of strangers, it can feel more like you're having a one-on-one conversation with different people in the room.
That's a great point. Eye contact helps you engage with your audience. And you don't have to make eye contact with everyone all the time, that would be too much. But you can look at a few friendly faces in the room. It helps you feel less alone and more connected to the people you're speaking to. Plus, when you make eye contact, you can see that most people are listening and are interested in what you have to say, which can boost your confidence.
Yes, it helps to remember that most people want you to succeed when you're speaking. They're not waiting for you to mess up. They're interested in your message and want to understand you. Focusing on that positive energy can help reduce your fear. Instead of thinking, everyone is judging me, you can think, people are listening to me because they want to hear what I have to say.
Exactly. Shifting your mindset from I'm being judged to I'm being listened to can make a huge difference. And remember, no one is expecting you to be perfect. If you make a mistake, just keep going. Most of the time, people won't even notice. And if they do, they'll probably forget it right away because they're focused on the overall message, not the little details.
Yes, and if you do make a mistake, it's okay to correct yourself. You can say, "Oh, I meant to say double quotes," and then keep going. It's completely normal, and it shows that you're comfortable enough to adjust as you speak. It's all part of the process. And speaking of process, I think it's important to mention that building confidence in speaking doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and it's something that gets easier the more you practice.
That's such a good point. It's easy to feel frustrated if you don't feel confident right away, but confidence grows over time. Every time you speak, you're building that confidence muscle we talked about earlier. And the more you speak, the more natural it will feel. It's a gradual process, and it's important to be patient with yourself as you improve.
Yes, patience is key. We all want to feel confident right away, but learning a language, especially speaking it, is a journey. You'll have good days where speaking feels easy, and you'll have challenging days where it feels harder. But every time you speak, even if it feels difficult, you're making progress. You're becoming a better speaker with each conversation, no matter how it goes.
Absolutely. And I think that's something to really remember. Every conversation is practice. Even if it doesn't go perfectly, it's still valuable practice. The more you speak, the better you'll get. And speaking doesn't have to be a formal thing. You can practice in casual situations, like talking to a friend, chatting with someone online, or even speaking to yourself. All of it counts.
That's a great reminder. Every little bit of practice helps. And speaking of casual situations, one thing that can reduce the fear of speaking is to make it fun. You don't always have to be serious when practicing English. You can play games, tell jokes, or even sing in English. The more enjoyable you make it, the less pressure you'll feel. And when you're having fun, you're more likely to forget about your fears.
Yes, making language learning fun can really take the pressure off. When you're relaxed and enjoying yourself, it's easier to speak without overthinking. Maybe you love music, try singing along to your favorite English songs. Or maybe you enjoy cooking, watch cooking videos in English and try to explain the recipe as you cook. The more you make English a part of your daily life, the less it will feel like a stressful task.
Exactly. When English becomes a natural part of your daily routine, it doesn't feel like something you have to do, it's just something you do, like any other activity. And when you use English in different, fun ways, you're also improving your language skills without even realizing it. The more you engage with the language in relaxed settings, the easier it will be to use it in more formal situations.
Yes, and don't be afraid to mix it up. If you feel nervous about having a long conversation, maybe try speaking for just a few minutes at a time. You can gradually increase the length of your conversations as you feel more comfortable. And remember, it's okay to take breaks and recharge. Learning a language is a journey, and it's important to enjoy it along the way. So James, we've covered so many helpful tips for overcoming the fear of speaking English, changing your mindset, setting small goals, practicing in real-life situations, and even using strategies like preparation and deep breathing. But there's one more key aspect we haven't fully touched on yet: consistency. How important is it to keep practicing regularly if you want to beat that fear?
Consistency is everything. Think of it like exercising. If you want to build muscle or get stronger, you need to exercise regularly, not just once or twice a month. Speaking English works the same way. The more you speak, the more confident you become. It's about building that habit, that routine, where English becomes a natural part of your life. You don't have to wait for a perfect moment to practice. You can practice a little every day, and over time, you'll see big improvements.
That's a great analogy. I like to think of consistency as creating small, manageable habits that make speaking English feel normal, like part of your daily routine. For example, you can start your day by saying a few sentences in English or talking about what you have planned for the day, even if it's just to yourself. Little moments like that really add up.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be a big commitment. Some people get discouraged because they think they need to set aside hours to practice, but even just a few minutes each day can make a huge difference. You can talk to yourself, listen to English podcasts while you're doing chores, or even text a friend in English. The important thing is to do something with the language every day, no matter how small it seems.
Right. It's about keeping that connection with the language alive. The more you use English, even in small ways, the less intimidating it will feel when you need to use it in bigger situations. And that brings me to another point: mistakes. A lot of people get really hung up on the idea of making mistakes. They think, I'll only speak when I can do it perfectly, but waiting for perfection can actually hold you back.
Yes, that's such an important point. Mistakes are a natural part of learning, and everyone makes them, even native speakers. The fear of making mistakes can stop people from speaking at all, but the truth is, mistakes help you learn. When you make a mistake, you learn what to improve for next time. And most people are understanding when you're learning a language, they don't expect you to be perfect.
Exactly. Perfection isn't the goal, communication is. As long as people understand what you're trying to say, you're succeeding. If you make a mistake, correct it and move on. There's no need to feel embarrassed or frustrated. I think we've all been there. Sometimes we make a mistake and feel like it ruins everything, but that's not true. What's important is that you keep going and keep communicating.
Yes, and actually, making mistakes can even be a positive thing. It shows that you're trying, that you're putting yourself out there, and that you're learning. Sometimes, when we make mistakes, we remember them better and we improve faster. So, instead of seeing mistakes as something to fear, it helps to see them as part of the learning process.
That's such a good perspective. And speaking of learning, another helpful tip is to surround yourself with English as much as possible. We've talked about how important it is to practice speaking, but it's also useful to hear and read English every day. The more you immerse yourself in the language, the more familiar it will feel. What do you think, James?
Yes, immersion is a powerful tool. The more English you hear and see, the more natural it becomes for you. You start picking up new words, expressions, and even the rhythm of how people speak. It doesn't have to be formal studying either. You can watch movies, listen to music, or read articles in English, anything that keeps your brain engaged with the language. The more you surround yourself with English, the easier it will be to speak when the time comes.
Absolutely. And when you're surrounded by the language, you're also exposing yourself to different accents, different ways of speaking, and various cultural references. That can be really helpful in building confidence because you'll start to understand that there are many ways to speak English. There's no single right way to do it.
Yes, and that's an important thing to remember. English is a global language. There are so many accents and dialects, and no one speaks it perfectly all the time. Some people have a British accent, some have an American accent, and others might have a mixture of both or even their own unique way of speaking. The goal is to be understood, not to sound exactly like someone else. Your voice and your accent are part of who you are, and they can make your English unique and interesting.
Exactly. I think a lot of learners feel pressured to sound like a native speaker, but the truth is, your accent is part of your identity. It's okay to have an accent. What's important is clarity being understood. And if you feel confident with your voice, that confidence will shine through when you speak. It's all about embracing who you are and how you speak English.
That's such a positive message. Embracing your own voice is so important. And when you stop worrying about sounding perfect, you free yourself to actually enjoy speaking English. It's no longer about impressing anyone, it's about communicating and expressing your thoughts, your ideas. And that's really the ultimate goal of any language, right? To connect with others.
Exactly. Language is about connection. And once you start thinking of English as a tool for connection, rather than something you have to master perfectly, it takes a lot of the pressure off. You can focus more on expressing yourself, sharing your ideas, and less on whether every word is perfect. The more you speak, the more you'll realize that the people you're speaking to are just happy to hear from you. They're not waiting to correct you.
Yes, most people are far more focused on what you're saying than on how you're saying it. And when you focus on the message rather than the mistakes, speaking English becomes much more enjoyable. You can relax and just have a conversation. And honestly, that's the key: relaxation. When you relax, your brain works better, your words flow more easily, and you start to enjoy speaking rather than fearing it.
That's such good advice. And relaxing doesn't just come from feeling confident in your English, it also comes from trusting yourself. Trust that you have the ability to speak. Trust that even if you make a mistake, you can fix it. Trust that every conversation you have is helping you get better. The more you trust yourself, the more you'll enjoy the process.
Yes, trust is so important. Trusting yourself to communicate, even when it's not perfect, is key to overcoming fear. And trust that the people you're speaking with are there to listen and understand, not to judge. When you trust yourself and trust the process, speaking English becomes less of a challenge and more of an opportunity.
Exactly. Every conversation is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to connect. The fear of speaking English doesn't go away overnight, but with each conversation, each time you push yourself a little bit more, the fear gets smaller and your confidence gets bigger. The important thing is to keep going, keep speaking, and keep trusting yourself.
That's right. And if there's one thing we want to leave you with today, it's this: don't let the fear of making mistakes stop you from speaking English. The more you speak, the easier it becomes and the more confident you'll feel. Your journey with English is your own, and it's okay if it takes time. Just keep moving forward, one conversation at a time.
Exactly. You've got this. Speaking English is a skill, and like any skill, the more you practice, the better you'll get. Be patient with yourself and remember that every step forward, no matter how small, is progress. We believe in you, and you should believe in yourself too.
And with that, we want to thank you for joining us today. We hope these tips and strategies help you overcome your fear of speaking English and give you the confidence to keep practicing. If you found this podcast helpful, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any future episodes.
Yes, and don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and family who are also learning English. The more you practice together, the easier it will be to reach your goals. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Keep speaking and keep believing in yourself.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.